Well, I've got a candle mould here, and someone sent it to me in the post, but I have no idea who sent it to me. So if you sent it, then let me know in the comments below. And thank you very much for sending it to me. What it looks like a big old snake wrapping round a rose. So I've got the rose here, and then the snake here. It doesn't look a really shiny mould, so I don't think it's going to give a particularly shiny finish to it. But I still think it's going to work okay. And, you know, this is going to answer that question. Can candle moulds be used in resin? And actually, I can't see why they can't be. So I'm going to be using some fuchsia chameleon flakes for this rose. I want to try and avoid as much as possible getting it on any of the snake area. So what I'm going to do is, before I start to put that on, I'm just wrapping a bit of kitchen paper around the rest of this mould, and then I'm going to tape it down. Now, I have checked, and this mould is available, so whoever sent it to me was able to purchase it, and if you like it, then you'll be able to purchase it as well. So I'm using a brush to start with on my mica flakes, and I'm putting them everywhere I believe is rose. Now, if it isn't, then I'm going to have to go in and wash this off. Always remember, whenever you're using chameleon flakes, to make sure you burnish them once you've got them on, because that way you get a much nicer finish. But they do fly around and get everywhere, so it's well worth having a bit of paper on it first. And by burnishing, I just mean lightly going over it several times with your brush like this. And that makes everything lay down nice and flat and gives a really great finish. Now, I'm squeezing this mould quite firmly because that way it's pushing out the silicone and allow me to get into all these little crannies and nooks. So that's done now, and it all looks very, very clean, which is unlike me. I'm usually really messy. So what I'm going to be using now is my chameleon flakes, my little personal mixture, and that's all my odds and ends that I just poured into this pot. But I'm not going over the whole thing here. I'm just allowing the static on this to pick some up first, rubbing it over like this, and the static of this mould is going to pick up certain bits of this. And now once that's on there, I'm going to rub that in and burnish that up. Yeah, and I'm happy with the amount that's on there. There's not too much on there. Now I'm going to use the chrome powders by Let's Resin, and I'm going to be using the gold chrome on this. And then I'm going to wipe this all the way over, including over where I've put those chameleon flakes. And again, I'm making sure I burnish this down. But I use a sponge applicator for this because I find it really does apply it much easier. And I shall go over the whole mould now like this, apart from where I've put that rose in. So that's all finished now. I've burnished all that up, and I need to turn this mould into the right way. You really need to do this gently, because if not, what you'll do is you'll crack all your hard work, and then you'll find that it won't give you as nice an even coating. So once I've turned it inside the right way, all I'm doing now is going back round using the burnishing tool, but without putting any more powder on it, and burnishing down any bits that I think may have got dislodged as I turned it back into the right way. And then going in with my long brush, and there we go. That's all ready now for me to pour my resin. Now that's going to hold quite a lot of resin, so what I'm going to be using for this is a deep pour resin. I've got a deep pour resin that I know without any shadow of doubt will work in that. So this resin is mixed up as a 2-to-1 mix. It's the Tea Expert Deep Pour resin, and this will work beautifully with this. It'll also give it time, because it's quite a nice thin consistency, to release any bubbles if I mix any bubbles into it. So I'm going to quickly mix this up, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do to be able to ensure that this chrome really shows off, and so does the fuchsia. So I'm going to mix this up as a 2-to-1. I'm going to use 2 parts A. So I've got 200 ml of A and 1 part B, which is 100 ml. And that'll give me 300 ml in total. And as I said, this is a nice thin resin. Now, whenever you're using a deep pour resin, it's quite warm here actually today, so this will cure a little bit quicker. Always make sure that you've got it thoroughly mixed by scraping your sides and the base. Now, I've done a whole video on when to use deep pour resin and how to mix it, so it might be worth checking that out. I'll link it at the end of this video because that will give you some really, really good tips. And you'll see it starts to go a little bit cloudy, so mix this until it's nice and clear. I would say at least 4 minutes. Remember, you've got quite a large volume of resin in here, so it's going to need that little bit of extra mixing. So that's fully mixed now, and what I'm going to put into this is some black pigment paste. Now, I'm not going to overload it, but it's really important that when you're using the chrome powders and the chameleon flakes, that you have a base colour if you want a really solid result, because it gives a much better finish and you will really appreciate the fact that you've done it. So I'm going to mix that in now, and you can always tell if you've mixed it in thoroughly by lifting up your palette or whatever you're using to mix it with, and if it's giving you a more of a solid colour without any clear streaks, then you've actually mixed it really, really well. Look at that. You see, that is really starting to mix in there nicely now. Because sometimes it looks like it's mixed in, and then when you pour it, you get bands of clear and bands of colour. And you don't need much of this. Honestly, these epoxy pigment pastes are brilliant. They come in lots of different colours, and they'll last you for a long, long time. But they're really great colours. Look at that. So I'm happy with how well that's mixed now. What I'm going to do is pour a little bit in there and then do a little bit of squidgy widgy to make sure that that has got everywhere I want it to be in my rose. And then do a little bit of tapping as well, because that'll help release any trapped bubbles that are in there and give us a much nicer look to that final rose. And now what we can do is fill this right up to the top, pouring in slowly, because that way we're less likely to get any real trapped bubbles in there. And then what I'll do is I will leave that for about 5 minutes, let any bubbles come up to the top, and any of the bubbles that come up to the top I can then just burn off with a long neck lighter. So that's had 5 minutes now. Not many bubbles have come up to the top, and I can just go over this and burst them with a long neck lighter. And then we can leave that for about 2 days to cure. It is going to take 2 days, and in 24 hours, that is still going to be really soft. So we'll come back to that in 48 hours. Well, this is all lovely and cured now, and I can't wait to take it out. I know because this isn't a shiny mold that it's not going to give me a really shiny finish. But what I'm going to do is show you a way of making it glossy if you want to have it glossy. And also, I have no idea what this is going to look like when it comes out because I've never used this mold before. So it's demolding ever so easy. I will link it in the description below, so you will be able to get hold of it, don't worry. So look at that. That has come out so well. I love the rose, and I managed to do all the petals of the rose as well, which I sometimes miss. And where I've put those odd bits of chameleon flakes going around, it just breaks up that gold a little bit. But as you can see, that gold is not what I would call a really glossy finish, and that's because of this type of mold. But overall, really happy with that. I think that is lovely. I made a brilliant candle, definitely. But I really like it made from resin. So what I'm going to do now is quickly show you how easy it is to turn this from a dull finish or a matte finish to a gloss finish. So the easiest way to do it is, I find, like this. What you need is a cheap brush like this. This is a really cheap brush. Come in a pack of 6 brushes for something like £2. And some low viscosity UV resin and a UV light. Now I'm going to work on my automatic turntable, and you'll see why in a second. I've cut myself a little piece of silicone to fit on the top, and then I'm going to put that on the top of there. And you'll see why that becomes important in a minute. Now, to make my life easier, what I am going to do is to pour some of my UV resin into that little plastic cup. Now, I'm not working in an area where there's any natural light coming in, so it is absolutely fine working like this. Now, if you've got a lot of natural light coming into your area, then I would try and work in a dark area, because you want to be able to leave this a few minutes before you cure it up. All I'm doing is dipping my brush in and going over this with a really thin coat of UV resin, trying to smooth it out as much as I possibly can as I'm going round. See, look, you can see there how I'm just brushing that on, and that will bring that up into a beautiful shine. You only want a thin coat on there. So let's show you what it looks like on here, on the snake. Look at the difference there. So you've got that glossy bit there, and then you've got the matte bit. Let's show you on this where the bigger scales are. Look at that. There we go. That has given a great gloss finish, and then you go around to the matte finish. So what I'm going to do is just carry on painting this on all the way around to make sure I've got it all covered, and then I'm show you how I'm going to use this turntable. So that's all coated now. So what I'm going to do is turn this on, and that is spinning slowly. And now what I'm going to do is set my light up and let that cure like that for 5 minutes, and you can already see how beautiful and glistening that is. My advice as well is please don't stare at your UV lights. UV light is not good for your eyes, so walk away while you've got it like this. That's why I try not to use mirrors and things like that, because even from UV lamps like this, it can damage your eyes. And we'll leave that now for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to it. So my lights have gone off, so this should all be cured up now. I can turn that off. Take that off, and it's all lovely and cured, and look how glossy that is. I mean, it makes such a difference. It really has come out well. I love it. So much more glossy. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out the one that I've got coming up now. It's another one if you want to learn more about different techniques with resin. Great video. Boot that like button, hit that subscribe button, but most of all, enjoy your resin. Take care. Bye.